I quoted them for $700. She's like, I'm gonna submit it for $4,000. They're gonna be like, who is this guy? We're not gonna pay him. So she came back and she said, so they didn't approve the $4,000. What they did approve was. Do you ever cringe at the thought of somebody asking you how much you charge for your art? And is the number that you're thinking about in your head often a lot higher than the number that you actually end up quoting them? If this sounds like you, then I want to tell you that you're not alone. And in fact, I used to think exactly like this. This used to be an issue for me until I had this freelance job come by that completely flipped my mindset upside down. I remember it was an ice cream package that I had to illustrate for this client. It was a supermarket. And I quoted them $700 to do this packaging illustration for them. And what they ended up paying me was absolutely wild. And I'm gonna share what that number was in just a bit. But first, I wanna tell you that this fear of being afraid to charge for your art, being afraid to charge what you're actually worth, is a lot more common than you probably think. You probably see other artists and you see like, man, look how well they're doing, or look how well she's doing, or whatever. And you think like, you're probably the only one that has this issue. And I wanna tell you, it's a way more common than what you might imagine. And it's crazy because especially I see this a lot in the creative industry. With creative professionals, I've often, and I've done this myself, where I've seen where people apologize or make explanations for why they're charging what they're charging. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you walk into a burger joint and say, hey, how much is the steak burger? And the lady's like, oh, it's $18 for the steak burger. What she doesn't do is she doesn't start to explain to you, yeah, you know, it's $18 because we use organic bread and our cows are well taken care of. Like, they don't explain why the burger costs $18. It just costs that and then that's it. But I find that with artists, a lot of times we feel like, yeah, I'm gonna design this logo for you, but it's gonna cost this much because I have to do this much research, or it's gonna cost this much to do a painting of your cat because I need the this or I need the that. And I just wanna encourage you, stop doing that. You don't have to explain why. Yes, you can talk about certain things like, hey, I need this much for materials and then this is how much my fee is. But you don't have to go into explaining why you're worth what you're worth. And I think that happens because, especially for artists, a lot of times, and in just conversations that I've had with artists, a lot of times they're worrying about, yeah, but what if I'm charging too much? What if I'm charging over what I should be, especially with my experience or whatever? And what I can tell you is this, and I'm gonna tell you this like, I'm almost 100% certain you are not overcharging. I can almost guarantee you, especially statistically speaking, that you're most likely not just even charging what you're supposed to be, but I can almost guarantee you that you're charging below what you should be charging. And I think that part of the reason why that happens to creative people is because of imposter syndrome. I read this study that said that more than half of people in creative fields, about 53% actually, struggle with imposter syndrome. And it says that this is actually much higher in creative fields than other industries. When you start to feel like an imposter, then that's when you start to doubt yourself. And when you start to doubt yourself, this is when you start to undervalue and undercharge. And this eventually leads to just making it really impossible for you to charge a premium price for your specialized skill. And yes, you have a specialized skill. There's a reason why people approach you and ask you, hey, can you draw this for me? Can you design this logo for me? Can you take these photos for me? They see what you're doing, they like it, and you have something special that they need in order to accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to do. So that in itself will show you, that in itself is proof that you have a specialized skill. You need to start acting like you deserve to be compensated for the work that you do. You know, I think a lot of times with creative people, it's because you enjoy doing the art that you feel almost guilty getting paid for it. But you're doing the work. And so if you're doing work, you deserve to be paid for it. You know, that's actually a biblical principle. There's a Bible scripture in 1 Timothy 5:18, and it says, a worker deserves his wages. But then I also like in Jeremiah 29:11, it says that God has plans. It talks about God declaring that he has plans to prosper you. But here's the question that I have for you. How do we as artists expect God to prosper us if every time he sends us an opportunity, if every time he sends us a person asking for a job, hey, can you design this for me? If every time that something comes to us, we undercharge, we undervalue ourselves. We think, oh well, I probably shouldn't charge that because if we continue to do this, then how can we expect for God to prosper us in the things that we do? So here's what happened with the client that I was talking about earlier. The client was actually a supermarket. It was actually Publix supermarkets. They were looking for an illustrator to draw one of their premium ice cream packaging. And I quoted them for $700. Now, the way that I even got connected with this job is I knew one of the art directors on this assignment, on this project. And I told her, I said, yeah, I'll do this for $700. Like, that'll be great. And she responded back and she's like, Joel, we're not gonna pay you $700 for this job. And she's like, no, we're gonna pay you a lot more for that. And I thought, okay, like, yeah, in my head, I'm thinking like $800, $900 maybe, thinking fairly small still. But then she says, no, Joel, I'm going to submit this job. Now, she wasn't the final say on how much the artist is going to get paid, but she submits it. She submits a request and then it gets approved. And she goes, no, Joel. She's like, I'm going to submit it for $4,000. And and I thought to myself, I was like, no, like, don't do that. Like, I actually want to get this gig. Like, that's insane. $4,000. Again, the small thinking, the small mindset. I'm like, $4,000. Like, they're going to say no. They're going to be like, who is this guy? We're not going to pay him $4,000 to do one drawing of an ice cream package. And I was like, no. Tell them, fine, submit it for $1,500, $1,200, $1,500, somewhere in that range. And she's like, no, we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna submit it for $4,000. You're worth the $4,000. This is normal. I'm not asking for anything outside of the norm. Like, and you're a talented artist. That's why I approached you. Again, a lot of the same things that I mentioned earlier. And I was like, okay, fine, submit it. And the whole time I'm thinking, it's just probably not gonna go through. They're probably gonna say, hey, we're definitely not doing that. They'll probably give me half or whatever. So she came back and she said, Joel, so they didn't approve the $4,000. But what they did approve was $3,800. Man, that was insane. I remember when she said that, I remember thinking, what in the world? I remember thinking, I made it. This is it. I am rich. I obviously I know $3,800 is not rich, but in that moment as an artist, I had never gotten paid anything like that before. Not for one project. I had never seen money like that for a single project, and I remember just thinking, wow, this really happened. And of course, shortly after that, definitely, I had those moments of imposter syndrome again. Okay, but now am I gonna be able to deliver? Long story short, that's for another video, but it turned out great. And what this did for me, it changed my mindset. It made me realize, like, wow, this is possible, this is doable. And I just have to start looking at things a little bit different. And I want you to think about that, because when you start charging what your creativity is actually worth, you're not being greedy. You're just accepting payment for something of value that you have. You're taking that gifting that God put inside of you first and foremost, and you're using that gift to be able to provide for your family, to be able to pay for your school, to be able to cover whatever expenses it is that you're doing, or to be able to do the things that you're trying to do. Many times, especially as a Christian, certain things that you want to do to move the kingdom of God forward. And this reminds me of this Bible verse that I'm sure you probably heard. I really like. It's Genesis 12:2, and it says, I will bless you and you will be a blessing, which means that when you prosper in your work, you're able to bless other people. Even the client that came to you, you were able to bless them by being able to take that vision, that idea, that painting, that photograph that they had that they wanted you to paint, or whatever it is, and you're able to visualize it. You're able to bring it to life. So in closing, I want you to hang in tight and just listen to this question. I want to leave you with this question. People often ask me, how much should I charge for my art? How much should I charge for a character design? Or how much should I charge for a logo? Or whatever that is. And I think that you're asking the wrong question. And let me explain to you what I mean. If you came to me and you asked me, hey Joel, how much should I charge for this logo or for this illustration? And I told you, hey, you're charging $500, but really you should be charging $2,000 for that. That's a $2,000 job. The question is not how much should I be charging. The question is that when I give you this advice, are you willing to take that advice and apply it? Are you comfortable enough to say, you know what, and go back to the client and say, hey, yeah, this is gonna be $2,000. Are you confident enough to do that? That's the question to ask yourself. The problem is not that you don't know how much to charge. The problem is that you don't know how much your talent is worth. You don't know how much your creativity, your gift is actually worth. And until you begin to understand and believe that for yourself and know that there is value in that, it's going to be very difficult to move forward and progress in your art career. It's less about math and technical skills and more about mindset. And many times in my life, the way that I've been able to switch a mindset is through faith. It is through prayer, which is why I created this very simple PDF that has a declaration and a prayer in it. And what I want you to do is I want you to check out the link below. You can download it for free. And what I want you to do is I want you to read through that. And I want you to read these prayers over your work, over yourself. And I want you to do this every day as often as you can, as consistently as you can, until you really start to believe the value and the worth of your work, of your creativity. If you do that, it's gonna really transform your career. I know that it did for me, and I'm so confident that it will for you. So please check it out. It's in the description below, and I will see you guys on the next one. Keep the fire alive, my friends.